Captain America, otherwise known as Steve Rogers, the hero of World War II, and one of the most renowned members of the Avengers, being most of the time their leader. Captain America has always been about how, essentially, it's not about the strength of the man in the fight, but it's about the strength of the fight in the man. Doesn't matter where you come from, how humble an origin you have, you can still be a hero no matter what. And Captain America himself, also known as Steve Rogers, has a pretty humble origin. What is that origin? Well, let's find out. Steve Rogers was born on the 4th of July 1922, of all the days, Independence Day, to poor Irish immigrant parents, Sarah and Joseph Rogers. Rogers grew up a frail youth during the Great Depression in New York City, New York, America. Little else is known about Rogers' early life, other than the fact that a strong sense of duty, honor, and humility was instilled in him, perhaps due to his Irish Catholic upbringing. Rogers' father died when he was a child, and his mother died from pneumonia later when he was in his late teens. Steve used to go to a school in the Lower East Side neighborhood. Among the people responsible for instilling the patriotic values in him were his civics teacher, Edna Crossley, who taught that as an American it was their responsibility to protect the United States, which gave more rights than any other country in the world to its citizens. Horrified by newsreel footage of Nazis ransacking Europe and atrocities in Asia that the Empire of Japan committed in China and Korea, Rogers tried to enlist in the army but was rejected as 4F because of his frailty and sickness. Overhearing the boy's earnest plea to fight for his country, General Chester Phillips of the US Army offered Rogers the opportunity to take part in a top-secret performance-enhancing experiment called Operation Rebirth. Rogers agreed and was taken to a secret laboratory in Washington, D.C., where he was introduced to Dr. Abraham Erskine, codenamed Professor Joseph Reinstein, the creator of the Super Soldier Serum. After weeks of tests, Rogers was at last administered the Super Soldier Serum. Given part of the compound intravenously and another part orally, Rogers was then bombarded by Vita rays, a special combination of exotic wavelengths of radiation, or exotic in 1941 anyway, designed to accelerate and stabilize the serum's effect on his body. Steve Rogers emerged from the Vita ray chamber with a perfect human body. A Nazi spy who observed the experiment, however, murdered Dr. Erskine mere minutes after its conclusion. Dr. Erskine died without fully committing the super soldier formula to paper, leaving Rogers the sole beneficiary of his genius. Rogers was then put through an intensive physical and tactical training program that taught him gymnastics, hand-to-hand combat from Colonel Rex Applegate and William S.R. Fairbairn, and military strategy. 3 months later, he was given his first assignment to stop the Nazi agent called the Red Skull. To help him become a symbolic counterpart to the Red Skull, Rogers was given a red, white, and blue costume of Captain America. Rogers was also given the cover identity of a clumsy infantry private at Camp Layot. After successfully becoming Captain America, Rogers was later submitted to an experimental mind conditioning program that conditioned his mind to accept false information about Walter Rogers' family on the chance he was captured by the enemy and forced to reveal classified information. As part of the conditioning, Rogers believed his real name to be Grant Rogers, that he had a brother named Michael who had died in Pearl Harbor, and that due to his parents being diplomats, he had a casual upper-class appointment to the Army and Captain America position. It would not be until far later in life that Rogers would recall the conditioning and his true history. Rogers was originally issued a traditionally kite-shaped shield made of mundane steel, as well as a sidearm. Cap's original helmet served as a mask and was separate from the rest of his costume. This proved a problem, as in one early outing it was nearly knocked from his face via the hard wing emblems. almost revealing his identity to an attending newspaper reporter with a camera. Adding a protective neck-plating hood to his costume, rather than his separate mask, solved this problem and afforded Rogers more protection. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt later presented Rogers with his now legendary disc-shaped shield. Discovering that its excellent aerodynamic properties made it an effective offensive weapon, Rogers abandoned his sidearm. During the war, Cap served as both a symbol of freedom and America's most effective special operative. In addition to working with his young sidekick Bucky Barnes, Cap regularly fought alongside other Allied superheroes such as Namor the Submariner and the android Human Torch, not to be confused with Johnny Storm of the Fantastic Four, who were the recognized core of the World War II super team known as the Invaders, a name suggested by English Premier Winston Churchill. Rogers sometimes came into contact with a Canadian paratrooper named James Howlett, you might remember that name, the man who would come to be legendarily known as the Wolverine. Roger faced fascist Germans and imperialist Japanese. Among these foes and adventurers were battles with George Maxson, who was an imposter Red Skull, the White Death, the Legion of Unholy Beggars, the Dragon of Death, the Reaper, the Black Talon, Stryker, Dr. Crime, Mock Mikado, Master Man and the Super Axis, Prophet of Hate, Agent Axis, the Shark, the Hyena, N2, and Mr. Sinister, Dr. Destiny, Jack the Ripper and Terudu, Dormammu, Hydra, the Hand, the Grandmaster, the Ringmaster, Baron Zemo, Colonel von Wagner, Fane, who later died in Hiroshima and thus became one of the Everwraith, and the Butterfly. I mean, points for creative names during World War II. He also prevented the murder of President FDR by a group called the Defenders, the Battle of the Bulge, D-Day, stopping saboteurs, early March 1941, meeting Wakandans, saving President Roosevelt from a deranged Namor, meeting Nikola Tesla, saving a Manhattan Project scientist from the Red Skull with the help of the Howling Commandos, stopping the Red Skull's plot to deploy a centuries-old automaton designed by a time-traveling Doctor Doom, facing the Red Skull in a hover device, scuffling with fellow allies the Crusaders, fighting alongside the French Resistance and Peggy Carter, an American who had fallen in love with Captain America, almost accidentally slaying a war orphan, saving Michael Kramer from the Red Skull. Wow, he got up to a whole ton of stuff during this time. Anyway, in April 1945, Rogers stormed the Red Skull's bunker with Red Guardian, Patriot, and the Spirit of 76 in his last World War II battle with Red Skull. During the final days of the war, presumably on or before the 18th of April 1945, Captain America and Bucky were trying to stop a bomb-loaded drone plane launched by Baron Zemo when the plane exploded, apparently killing his partner Bucky and throwing Rogers into icy Arctic waters of the English Channel. The super soldier formula prevented crystallization of Rogers' bodily fluid, allowing him to enter a state of suspended animation rather than just freezing to death. Although Rogers and Bucky had seemingly perished, the war still raged on, and US presidents and the government picked different volunteers, such as William Naslund, Jeffrey Mace, and another Steve Rogers, over the years to keep the morale alive, and even after World War II ended. Decades later, Rogers' wartime comrade, the Submariner, stumbled across his still frozen form, which was being worshipped by a far-flung Inuit tribe. Enraged, the Submariner threw the ice block into the ocean. While opposing Namor, the newly formed Avengers, consisting of Iron Man, Thor, Hulk, Ant-Man, and the Wasp, happened upon Rogers' thawing body and soon revived the legendary hero. Rogers joined their ranks as the first recruit since their formation and was given retroactive founding member status in place of Hulk. With his superhuman abilities, extensive training, combat experience combined with his impressive physique, confidence, and will, Rogers was an excellent addition to the team. As a born leader, Rogers would come to be seen as the heart and soul of the team and his commands, while in the field, were often followed regardless of who might have been team leader at the time. Rogers would teach teamwork, tactics, and hand-to-hand combat to many Avengers over the coming years. Seeing that Avengers associate Rick Jones bore a resemblance to Bucky, Cap took him into tutelage, trying to recover from the great trauma of losing his wartime partner. After a time, Jones even convinced Rogers to let him wear Bucky's old costume and initiate a partnership, although Cap strongly opposed Rick joining the Avengers as a full member. The early adventures Cap had with Earth's mightiest heroes included a run-in with his wartime foe Baron Heinrich Zemo. Zemo organized the first incarnation of the Masters of Evil, a group of supervillains who each bore a grudge against a particular Avenger. After several skirmishes between the two groups, Zemo kidnapped Rick and Zemo was accidentally killed in a rock slide, caused by his own weaponry as he battled Cap. At this point, the remaining founding Avengers, Iron Man, Thor, Giant Man, and the Wasp, decided to take a leave of absence from the stress of supercrime fighting. Captain America was thus left to lead a new team comprised of Hawkeye, the Scarlet Witch, and Quicksilver, all of whom were former villains. Cap's kooky quartet, as they were called, were at first regarded as less able than the previous lineup, but soon proved their worth by overcoming several threats, including a resurgent Kane as well as Doctor Doom. While the hot-headed Quicksilver and Hawkeye were at first headstrong, loose cannons, Rogers' leadership was able to mold them into valuable team members. When Cap took his first leave of absence from the team, it was the Black Panther who stepped in to take his place on the roster. Though when Cap discovered that one of T'Challa's motives was to spy on the Avengers, as part of his duty as King of Wakanda was to observe foreigners, relations between the two became strained and stayed that way for some time. Eventually, they restored the bonds of alliance and friendship, symbolized by Rogers giving T'Challa the enhanced copy of his World War II triangular shield he had used while his Round 1 was broken. Meanwhile, Cap's old nemesis, the Red Skull, was brought out of suspended animation by the subversive organization Them. The Skull feigned cooperation with Them, which was actually the ruling council of Hydra led by Baron Wolfgang von Strucker, long enough to steal the Cosmic Cube from subsidiary organization AIM. This led to the first post-war clash between the two great symbols of World War II. The Skull later impersonated Rogers and drove Rick away, while wielding the Cosmic Cube. Rogers often crossed paths with another World War II veteran as well, this one an ally, Sergeant Nick Fury of the Howling Commandos, whom he had met during the war, was now Colonel Nick Fury, Director of S.H.I.E.L.D. Captain America teamed with Fury many times after emerging from suspended animation, and their relationship warmed and cooled over the years. Depending on various circumstances, they often worked together towards the same goal, and the Avengers and S.H.I.E.L.D. maintained a close working relationship, even sometimes sharing a common computer database. Rogers worked with S.H.I.E.L.D.'s Agent 13, niece to Peggy. Rogers would come to share a deep romantic relationship with Sharon, eventually admitting his love for her. In another plot by the Skull, a Cosmic Cube-empowered man named Sam Wilson attacked Rogers. Steve was able to break Wilson of the Skull's control, and the two teamed together to defeat Cap's archenemy. Wilson became the Falcon and Steve's most reliable best friend. Cap and the Falcon would share an active partnership for a long time. Wilson actively succeeded Rogers as Captain America when Rogers was badly injured and was encouraged to continue on in the role by Rogers himself. Despite the encouragement, Wilson returned to the role upon Rogers' recovery. One of Rogers and Wilson's most noted battles was against one of Rogers' earlier successors, Steve Rogers and Jack Monroe, calling himself Bucky. Rogers was shaken at the fact that he could have shared his excessively conservative successor's fate, if not for the technical dedication of Dr. Erskine and his Vita Ray process. Following a battle with Viper, Rogers' super soldier serum reacted with the venom in his darts, temporarily granting him superhuman strength. While investigating the subversive organization known as the Secret Empire, Rogers discovered that its leader was a high-ranking government official. While this traitor committed suicide after being discovered, the government covered up the whole affair by using a double. Disillusioned, Rogers abandoned his Captain America identity and took up the alias Nomad. Two men tried in vain to assume the Captain America title, Bob Russo and Scar Turpin. While in the meantime, the young idealistic Cap fan Roscoe Simons actually succeeded Rogers, and Rogers himself awarded Simons his indestructible shield. It was Roscoe's death at the hands of the Red Skull that would inspire Rogers to become the Sentinel of Liberty, a symbol of American-inspired ideals rather than the US government super soldier he once was. In a graphic bit of scenery, Roscoe was crucified and tortured by the Red Skull as a message to Rogers that any other person in the costume would also suffer the same fate. If the Red Skull encountered any of the fake Captain Americas, Rogers reassumed his classic costumed identity and shield, and a rehabilitated Monroe joined Cap in a partnership, himself assuming the Nomad identity in a modified costume. When Avengers Mansion was attacked and conquered by the Masters of Evil under the leadership of Baron Helmut Zemo, Captain America was specifically targeted by Zemo to avenge his father's death, who was the previous Baron Zemo. Rogers was captured during an attempt to retake the mansion and was forced to watch as Mr. Hyde tortured helpless butler Edwin Jarvis. The Masters proceeded to destroy a treasure trove of Rogers' memorabilia, including a picture with Bucky taken just before he was killed, Rogers' only picture of his mother, a baseball signed by Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig, and Cap's original triangular shield. In the final battle, Cap defeated the Wrecker with the aid of the Wasp, and defeated Baron Zemo in a rooftop duel. As Zemo fell, Cap tried to grab his hand, and though he was later revealed to have survived the fall, Zemo refused such charity. Captain America continued to come into conflict with many foes, including the extreme anti-nationalist Flag Smasher and the vigilante called the Scourge of the Underworld. Rogers was informed by the Commission on Superhuman Activities that he had never been officially discharged from the US Army, and for this, he received a large back pay dating to the end of World War II, which he used to establish a nationwide hotline service to help him keep abreast of criminal activities. However, the Commission demanded that Rogers, as an active member of the armed forces, resume service as a government-directed operative, finding himself unable to merely follow orders as a simple soldier any longer, especially after the events of the government that led to him becoming Nomad. Rogers again resigned the Captain America identity, even surrendering his legendary shield to the new Captain America, John Walker, who had previously clashed with Rogers as the Super Patriot. During this time, Rogers used an adamantium shield and, adopting a new costume, continued adventuring as the Captain. Not long afterward, the Avengers were temporarily disbanded due to a lack of active members. As the Captain, Rogers led a new lineup of the Avengers consisting of Thor, Gilgamesh, and temporary recruits Reed and Sue Richards, Mr. Fantastic and the Invisible Woman respectively, of the Fantastic Four. Reed himself was accustomed to leading, however, and there were some conflicts of leadership between the two. The Captain also led an unnamed, unofficial team during the same period that accompanied him on several missions. Along with the Falcon and Nomad, the group at times included Demolition Man, who had assisted Rogers against Power Broker Inc., and Vagabond, a tag-along of Nomads. It would later be discovered that the Red Skull was manipulating the Commission. The Captain and Nomad clashed with Walker and his Bucky. Resolving their differences, Rogers and Walker confronted the Skull. Following the events and deeds that Walker had done while Captain America, Walker resigned from being Captain America, and the Commission asked Rogers to take up the mantle again. Rogers initially refused, but after Walker begged him, accepted. Later, Walker was apparently killed, but later reappeared in a new identity after plastic surgery in the new name of Jack Daniels, wearing Rogers the captain uniform and shield as the rechristened US agent. At one point, Cap avoided the explosion of a meth lab only to have the chemical effects of the blast react dangerously with his super soldier serum. To remove the problem, Rogers removed the serum and trained constantly to keep in peak condition. Cap discovered that the serum was not a drug per se, which would have metabolized out of his system, but in fact a virus that affected a biomechanical and genetic change. This additionally explained how arch-nemesis Red Skull, who at the time inhabited a body cloned from Rogers' cells, also had the formula in his body. Because of his altered biochemistry, Rogers' body began to deteriorate, and for a time he wore a powered exoskeleton designed by Iron Man and Dr. Hank Pym, but was eventually placed again in suspended animation. During this time, Rogers was given a blood transfusion from the Red Skull, which cured his condition and stabilized the super soldier virus in his system. Captain America returned both to crime fighting and the Avengers. Captain America was reunited with his World War II-era flame and former love interest, the now aged American Marquis fighter Peggy Carter. Freeing her and others from the grip of the criminal Dr. Faustus, Rogers had her hired on as communications expert at Avengers Mansion as part of the expanded domestic staff called the Avengers Support Crew. Their romantic feelings unfortunately diminished, but the two remained good friends. Another person taken on by Steve during this time was John Jameson, son of the legendary J. Jonah Jameson, who acted as his pilot. When the Avengers learned of the Kree-Shi'ar War and the danger the war efforts posed to Earth's sun, Rogers proposed to send diplomatic envoys to each superpower in an attempt to avert catastrophe known as Operation Galactic Storm. Captain America led the team bound for the Kree Empire. He had several conflicts of leadership with Iron Man, which culminated when the latter, against orders, led a team of Avengers to execute the Kree Supreme Intelligence for war crimes. His confidence in his leadership shaken, Cap offered to resign as chief executive and commanding officer of the two Avengers branches. But this was not the route the other Avengers wanted to take. Cap's old friend Hawkeye helped reinforce Cap's leadership confidence, as did the rescue by US agent John Walker and the Falcon of Demolition Man from Ultimatum, Flag Smasher's terrorist organization. After returning to Earth, Cap rescued Diamondback, Rachel Layton, from Red Skull's henchman Crossbones. Diamondback had previously, as a member of the Serpent Society, had a chance to kill Rogers in battle that she didn't take. This was because she was smitten with him. The two began an on-and-off semi-romantic partnership afterwards. Cap was part of the force raised to battle the psychic entity called Onslaught, and was one of the Avengers who seemingly gave their lives to absorb Onslaught's energy. In reality, they had been shunted to an alternate dimension created by Franklin Richards. After several months in this world, the heroes, which included the Senior Avengers and the Fantastic Four, realized it was a construct and escaped. During a rebuilding period with the Avengers, Captain America and the rest of the team, past and present, were duped by Morgan Le Fay into acting as her elite guard, the Queen's Vengeance. Rogers' alias in this alter ego was Yeoman America. He was the first Avenger to break out of Morgan's trance and formed a resistance group that foiled the ancient sorceress's plans. At some point after this, Nick Fury asked Captain America for a favor. He and a number of other superheroes, including Spider-Man, Daredevil, Wolverine, Luke Cage, and the Black Widow, were asked to travel to Latveria to help Fury overthrow the government of Lucia von Bardus. whom he discovered to be financing a number of technologically based supercriminals in the United States. Recognizing the potential terrorist ramifications of such an act, Fury decided to eliminate the threat despite being told to leave it alone by the American president. Unbeknownst to the assembled heroes, Fury planned to make an example of Von Bardus and brought down Castle Doom onto the city below, killing an untold number of people. Knowing that the superheroes could never condone such an action, he had the previous 2 days' activities erased from their minds. Months later, while undergoing some tests for S.H.I.E.L.D., this block in the Captain's memory was discovered and removed, prompting Captain America to have words with Fury. On the year anniversary of their attack on Latveria, the heroes were all attacked by an army of technology-wielding supercriminals led by Von Bardus, who survived the attack, although not without becoming horribly disfigured in the process. She synced up all of the criminals' armors, creating a chain reaction which acted like a giant bomb in an attempt to get back at Fury and the heroes and destroy New York in the process. She nearly succeeded, except for the last-second interference by Daisy Johnson, a superpowered S.H.I.E.L.D. agent loyal to Nick Fury, who managed to defeat Von Bardus before she could detonate her bomb. On a day that would become the darkest in Avengers history, the Scarlet Witch suffered a breakdown that, combined with her powers, had catastrophic consequences. Cap had recently had a strange encounter with Wanda, as well as the beginnings of romance, and was struck hard by the devastation of the team, which disbanded shortly thereafter. In future events, Rogers moved into the Red Hook neighborhood of Brooklyn, revealing his identity to the world, although he lived in a S.H.I.E.L.D. safe house, and resumed his off-and-on relationship with Sharon Carter. Cap was among those heroes present at the raft when Electro, a Spider-Man villain, instigated a jailbreak. The next day, he spoke with Tony Stark and convinced him to help form the New Avengers. Most of those present during the jailbreak were founding members of the team. The new S.H.I.E.L.D. director Maria Hill was opposed to their incorporation, but Rogers reminded her that he had full champion license. That is, he was authorized by S.H.I.E.L.D. to assemble any team he deemed necessary for any mission he deemed necessary, and therefore didn't need her permission. The New Avengers embarked on several missions under his leadership. Meanwhile, Cap had also been dealing with more personal matters. Having been made a special S.H.I.E.L.D. operative, Rogers, Sharon Carter, and Nick Fury began an investigation into Alexander Lukin and his powerful Cronus Corporation. After the apparent assassination of the Red Skull, Lukin was in possession of the Cosmic Cube, but he also had a more personal weapon, the Winter Soldier, a revived Bucky Barnes. A KGB assassin who had been occasionally let out of suspended animation to perform only the most difficult missions. The Winter Soldier encountered Sharon Carter, who believed that he was the real Bucky. Cap at first refused to believe it until Fury presented him with solid evidence. Winter Soldier killed Jack Monroe and caused major devastation in Philadelphia before Cap, the Falcon, and Agent Carter stormed a hidden underground base operated by Lukin. Cap and the Winter Soldier dueled, and the latter showed no sign of memory. Cap used the Cosmic Cube to restore his memory. Bucky then destroyed the cube and it teleported him to Camp Leia, where he began to cope with his past. Months later, Cap and Sharon tracked Bucky to a small Midwestern town that was actually controlled by AIM. Distracted by storming the AIM compound and battling Crossbones and Sin, Cynthia Schmidt, they were unable to catch up with him. When S.H.I.E.L.D. suggested the Superhuman Registration Act, Commander Hill ordered Rogers and the Avengers to help enforce it. When he refused, Hill had her trained Superhuman Restraint Unit to attack him. During the scuffle, Rogers avoided being tranquilized and managed to escape by lodging his shield in an aircraft and forcing the pilot to fly him to safety. Soon after, at the Baxter Building, the Watcher told the heroes who had gathered there about Cap's escape. He became the leader of the resistance of the Registration Act, fearing that the freedom of America's heroes and the safety of their families were in danger. And thus began the Civil War. Adopting the alias Brett Hendrick, a mall security guard to avoid government detection, Rogers became more and more extreme in his desire to win the Civil War. He allowed the Punisher to join his secret Avengers and worked, albeit reluctantly, with the Kingpin. Since his old friend Iron Man was leading the pro-registration superhero unit, their rivalry was especially bitter. The two attempted to meet twice during the conflict, but each time it devolved into combat. They even refused to attend the wedding of Black Panther and Storm together. Cap was nearly captured by Paladin, but escaped with the aid of Shang-Chi and the Heroes for Hire. In the final battle against the pro-registration forces, Rogers' teammate The Vision disabled Iron Man's armor, evening the odds for Cap and allowing him to ultimately defeat Stark in Times Square. However, a crowd of civilians approached in support of Stark. Realizing that his fight against the Registration Act was endangering the people that he was trying to protect, he surrendered to Iron Man. He then gave his followers the order to stand down. Following his surrender, Steve Rogers was indicted on several criminal charges. It was noted S.H.I.E.L.D. had restrained Steve with strength dampeners. While he was in custody, a successful assassination was orchestrated by the resurgent Red Skull, which involved Crossbones deployed as a sniper. He fired the first shot, hitting Captain America in the back as he entered a federal courthouse to stand trial for his criminal charges. In addition, Dr. Faustus, posing as a S.H.I.E.L.D. psychiatrist, had manipulated Sharon Carter and implanted in her mind a hypnotic suggestion that caused her to shoot Rogers 3 times in the stomach and chest in the chaos that ensued. Rogers was taken to a hospital where he succumbed to his wounds. Captain America was given a state funeral, but the body in his memorial at Arlington was a fake. Immediately after his death, Rogers' body was taken to S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters as the only perfect super soldier serum in the world. Inexplicably, his body was discovered to have withered back to its original frail state. Tony Stark, accompanied by Hank Pym and Janet Van Dyne, returned Steve Rogers' body to the Arctic, where they had found him frozen in ice. Namor also attended the small private ceremony, swearing that as long as he ruled the seas, no one would disturb Captain America's rest. Many people mourned him, including various heroes that knew him. Others, such as reformed Winter Soldier James Buchanan Barnes and Wolverine, swore to avenge his death. Before the day of his assassination, Rogers prepared a package to be delivered to Stark in the event that he wouldn't survive. It contained a photo of himself as Captain America and Bucky in World War II, and his final requests that Stark save Bucky, and that the mantle of Captain America should continue. A S.H.I.E.L.D. agent presented it to Stark, confirming that it was delivered by an unknown attorney. Thor, who was absent during the entire Civil War, communicated with Steve Rogers' spirit on the 1st anniversary of his death. Though Thor vowed to avenge him in full, Rogers declined, saying that their world was already too stained with the taint of death and violence. Thor granted Steve a minute of silence by using his powers to cut off all the electronic media in America for exactly 60 seconds. And thus ends the story of Captain America. Or at least it would be, but as we all know in comics, nobody actually stays dead unless their name is Uncle Ben. So, this is actually the end of part 1 of the history of Captain America. I hope you guys enjoyed, and until next week, we will see the conclusion to this grand arc. Until then, have a good one.